So the question of the Maimer was that the Seres Adibris Matan Torah, very simple matters were said, which we would know even from our own sense of morality and getting our cue from nature itself. So why would they say this? This is the shaila of the Rebbe Rashab in his Maimer of Tafresh Mem Daled, and he offered, he said, and to answer that they were commanded because God la mitzvah v'oiseh, mishe'eni mitzvah v'oiseh, greater is the reward, meaning of the one who is commanded and does, and the one who does and is not commanded. And Hashem wants to heap reward upon us, and therefore He commands us to observe even that which we would observe by the dint of our own discovery, our own need even. That doesn't answer the question, because if that were the case, it still doesn't have to be accompanied, and that's the primary question with the great drama, the kolos, the sounds and the lightning, the mountain smoking, hearing such simple matters. So he answered because based on other Maimorim of the Rebbe Rashab and other Maimorim, the answer is that Matan Torah accomplished the gewaltige Chidush of Amshachas Ha'atzmos b'chol mokem. B'golui, it's b'chol mokem. The essence of Hashem drawn down in a manifested way in every part of creation. That's the point. So therefore, morality is no longer morality. Morality is a human need or human convention. The objective is not to be moral. The objective, or be a mensch. All your life you were told to be a mensch. Now you found out that's not the goal. Be a mensch. Not the goal. The goal is that menschlichkeit be pervaded with getlichkeit, with godliness. Because Hashem wants to be part of our life. So the simple matters that we would do anyway, and they're right, with the giving of the Torah, they become more than right, they become divine. They become godly. And then he touched, and God spoke all these words saying, and the word saying is, in this particular instance, it needs explanation because usually it means leimer, to that Moishe should convey it to the Yidden. He's not talking to Moishe, he's talking to everybody. They all heard it. So what does leimer mean? There are many answers. One, that it refers to the response of the Yidden. But he adds here, he actually added in the star. No, I stand corrected. He's not referring to the response of the Yidden, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, whether they said hein to everything like Rabbi Akiva or hein and love like Rabbi Shmuel. But it seems when he says in footnote 12 in the star there, in addition to the Pirush, that it means to Bnei Yisrael, it seems from the star below that what it means by that it is, in addition to the Pirush, that leimer means to each individual. In addition to speaking to the collective of Klal Yisrael, it's to each individual. That's what it says in Yalkut, that each Yid said that God is speaking to me. In addition to that, he adds that it first refers to the physical world. That the physical world should be a zoger, a sayer, a speaker, and reflect Hashem's presence. Why? Because that was Amshachas Ha'atzmos in creation, on creation's terms, which is why he said such simple things. So creation, the Gashmi says, the Gashmi says, the world says that there's a God. In other words, even morality, the world becomes a secret thereafter that all people seek, not just morality, but people seek Hashem himself, the divine. So let's do Eis Gimel again. The people saw, and they stood off from a distance. They trembled and they stood off from a distance. So he says now, this was a kind of keli for the drawing down, as it were, the essence of the Eibishter into the world. Which begs the question, how can there be a keli? There's no keli, no vessel for God that can contain God. So what does it mean? By first prefacing, we're talking about the essence of Hashem that's revealed in Matan Torah. We're not talking about an actual vessel that can contain the divine. Moreover, not just contain the divine, but he means worthy of the divine revelation. Just to repeat something we've mentioned many times, but it's an important yesod, fundamental and elemental truth. And that is that people ask, fine, so I want to be spiritual and religious, but why must I follow the preordained path? Why can't I define my own spiritual path? So the answer is, go ahead, but that will bring you not an iota closer to God. Because the Eibishter is beyond, and there are no steps one can take, physical or spiritual or moral or any, that bring us an iota closer to him. 1 in a billion in the face of infinite are both equally insignificant, and that's just infinite. So the only connection to Atzmos is only possible because God allows it. We can't forge the connection between us and him, but he can because he has no limits. And he did so by giving us Torah and mitzvahs. And that's why it's critical, without which the relationship does not begin if it isn't predicated on carrying out his commandments. Mind you, this is also true of relationships in our own world. The only way to relate to somebody truly is on their terms, not on your terms. If you love someone because you express your love, let me put it in different terms. If you express your love in terms that you desire, you haven't touched them. I told you the story, it's worth repeating. Some of you haven't heard it. It's actually happened years ago in the old MTC that a couple came to see me, a very wealthy couple. She's sitting there dripping in jewelry. The marriage is in tatters, and he's totally mystified. He can't understand why. And he says to me, look, just look how she's dressed. He's the provider, the car she drives, the house she lives in, the restaurants they frequent, and the vacation spots that they travel to. She's the envy of the world, he says to me. And in a frustration, she actually took off a piece of jewelry and cast it on the table and says, I don't want it. And he was in complete shock, silence. The point was, he loved her. He loved to see her in these clothing. He loved to take her here. He loved her on his terms. He never simply asked the question, honey, what do you want? He's loving her, and he was a great provider. That's why I just couldn't understand. But he's providing on his terms. So that left him with him, or let's to rephrase that, it means he swallowed her. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos. A man without the fear of heaven would swallow his fellow alive. What does it mean? That means that without the fear of heaven, a relationship would be me. So I love you and swallow you. It's all about me. The only way to connect to somebody is on their terms, particularly when you don't understand it. Then you wouldn't do it. You don't appreciate it. And you're doing this because that's what he or she wants. Then you're really touching that person. Makes no difference to me. Or moreover, I don't understand why you need or want this. Or moreover, you should really want something else. But you still respect that, then you're connecting. How much more so with the Eibishter, where there's, see, when it comes to human intercourse, you can figure out what the other person wants without them telling you. But not with God. How do you connect to God without him telling us? Whatever we do is stuck with us. There's an inseparable gulf. So the only way to connect is on the Eibishter's terms. And yet now he's saying that there is a keli. There's a keli, and it's vayara om, vayano, vayamdim berachik. So what does it mean? See, he's explaining now, it's not a keli mamish, you don't mean an actual keli. You are now worthy and deserving of the connection. You've made the steps that now have brought you into this relationship by the dint of your own effort. There's no such thing. So what does this mean? Mikol mokem. So has to be a kind of preparation. The keli el gilo ya'atzmos, to the revelation of God himself. And what is that? He says that the asoras halomas vastedim babibul. Nothing in the affirmative, but just step out of the way, meaning to say, remove the barriers. That we can do. That Hashem is asking us to do. In simple language, make room for me. As in the famous story with the Kotzke, they asked him as a child, where is God? And he said, we let him in. Of course, he's everywhere. But he was speaking Gilo Ya'atzmos. So Gilo Ya'atzmos is through moving the concealments of our own yeshus and ego and agendas. And so that's what he's saying now. Now it continues. This is where we're up to, right? Like explained elsewhere, as follows. Right, as we all know, there's the awakening from above. It's from the Zoya, this language. There's that's God to man. Awakening from below, man to God. So there's three such overtures of God to man. And he refers now to the third one. What's the first two? In brackets. Before a Yid even embarks in the service of Hashem, he's empowered by God. Now it got cold. What? Okay, it's not too cold. It's not too cold? Let me know. It's very extreme, this reflective, it seems, of those that live here. It's extreme. So in addition to Zerusa de la Eila that precedes Zerusa de la Tato, that's what begins the Avodah. Hashem inspires, stirs us. The empowerment that comes from above. That's the first is Zerusa de la Eila. Then there's the second one, which follows our Avodah Zerusa de la Eila, Shalem Shechas Al Yidei Zerusa de la Tato. And then there's Hashem's the response to our Avodah. So that's two. There's the arousal to us that comes to us that begins the Avodah. Then there's the arousal or the response to our Avodah. So now there's a third level, third awakening from above, a third level of relationship, which our avodah doesn't touch at all. That's what we're talking about now. Gilo Ya'atzmos. So there's three stages In other words, Mamala and Soivev and Atzmos, really. Mamala Kalaman is the first awakening from above that Hashem stirs us in our world. And then comes our Avodah, and then comes his response. But that first response, which is the second Telsud de Leila, is commensurate to our Avodah. Again, the parallel is Soivev Kalaman. It's a level that a person can connect to, not directly, but indirectly. As a result of that, we then connect to the Eibush on a level where Avodah doesn't touch at all, the essence. In other words, at the outset, the Eibush shows us his love. We feel his love. By feeling his love means that there's something, we're not even looking for this necessarily, but there's something that stirs within us that life is more. We want the connection. That's the first thing. So then we embark on Avodah. And then as a result of embarking on Avodah, there's the second response from the Eibishter that is beyond our Avodah. Through Avodah, we touch the mystery of the divine. We connect to something which is beyond us. Once that has happened, God says, now me. Not just what's beyond you, but me. So this is so the third level, Giloy Atzmos, is a level where Avodah hasn't touched at all. It's not experiential. The first two are. Nonetheless, what we're saying is, even this God says, we need a little Avodah here. A me'ein of a keli. Still, it needs a perfection. The perfection, he said before, is the removal of all agenda. They've already received the Esrusa de Leila that came as a response and is commensurate to their Avodah. That's the mystery. That as I showed him is Gala, Gamkin, Esrusa de Leila, Shalamaila, Maila, Me'erich Esrusa de Latata Klau. Then comes the third stage, which is a connection which is completely beyond Avodah. Still, Shagam b'negedes the zur tzarechlis is a keli. Still, Hashem wants a relationship. There has to be a keli. It can't be one way. The says the Zohar Eibush only dwells in a whole place and nothing more whole than a broken heart or a humbled heart. It's not that your avodah naturally elicits this divine hamshacha. Not true. It's God's choice and gift. Nonetheless, but you make place. It's connected to that place. There is Ulamayla Yos and higher still. 1 second. No, this. I'm sorry. This is talking about the second. Because the second one. The second is Eila. No, it's the third one. No, not correct. So no, it's thrown by Lamayla Yosef. We're talking about this level. No. No, it is the second one. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the flow. Again, let's go back. I'm getting the Shim's garlic. Just start saying Susa de Gimel after the brackets. Shem Sheches and Moker, and there's no hiding avodah. Nonetheless, it's still the Gimel. Nonetheless, you need Maisa Tachtenu, which comes after the Susa de Leila that came with the Yerechas Susa de Latata. Yeah, this is all Gimel, so I'm just not sure about that language there. The Maila Yosa, we're talking about this level. Anyway, since the Eibishter only dwells in a whole place, so there's always has to be a me'ein avodah. So this is the third level. He has to remove all the concealments, which begs the question: remove concealments. What kind of concealments are you talking about? It's already had the avodah susa de latat. That's what we're saying. The concealment here is his own agenda. And that's what's happening here. That the Yidden tremble and stand from afar. That's that bittul of Asora Salamas Vastedim Valbilbulim, the removal of concealment and distraction. Again, it's his distraction. Reward, his shleimus, his milas, he's a chassid, he did well. All of his ego trips on all of their levels. That's what has to be removed, and that's the me'ein, the keli of mshachas atzmus. More detail now. You've not been mavu b'der masav cholam רואים deshnas tafreish ayin hey. So understood by that, which she explains in ayin hey, which is hemshach ayin beis. There he says, "Shekodim l'kol havaya v'isavos." So the chli is ahead. Before any being and creation, there has to be nothingness. Just like the tzimtzum is required in order there should be a giloy, a revelation to existence. So that's what's happening over here when it's radical. When it's not radical, when change is not radical, when you don't want the previous state to disappear. On the contrary, it's a building block to the next stage. So in order to go to the higher grade in school, you got to remember what you learned and proceed from there. But when it's radical, that means havaya visavos, then you need there has to be a complete letting go of the previous state, or the new state cannot emerge. So that's what's happening here. Amshachas ha'atzmos, which is beyond, there has to be the bittul. This is coming after the whole avodah sfiras ha'omer and all the whole avodah of the last days before Matan Torah, the separation and the skadoshu, all of the gewaltic achonis. The final achana was vayara v'yanu v'yamden merachik. So that's the union of vayara v'yanu shezel kinyan ahedra kedim lahavaya. This is the nothingness that precedes being. The kavona b'dan Torah is not another level, not another rung, but Eibush did himself. Therefore, in the general hachana building up to b'dan Torah, it's all about this bittul. That's what had to be the shibud, the breaking, the enslavement. Yidden went from Bnei Noach to being Yidden. That's not a rung up. That's not a new level. It's not a refinement on the old. It's radical. Eden became the Shamas Yisrael, Havaya Chadosha, a new entity, a new being. Therefore, it's Tzarech is Tchila Shibud Mitzrayim. So this is the whole Shibud that precedes the whole process of the breaking of the Metzius. Shaheder Shekedem Lavaya. This explains in Ayin Hey is the heder, the lack, the disappearance. It's mikveh. It disappears and the body dies for a moment. Then it can be reborn, can emerge from the womb. Before the emergence of the new existence. So now that's the trembling that the pasuk says that was induced by the kolos of Rakim, the sounds and the thunder and the lightning. This is what they saw, shook them up. The intent was to make them tremble, to shake them up, to make them lose themselves. And this is the me'ain of the keli, not the diak again is the ur atzmi. If it's not an ur atzmi, it just builds on the old, but it's an ur atzmi is radical. That's the heder that precedes the emergence of the new level of relationship. This lack, this bittul, that's the keli to the drawing down of etzem shehu havaya mitis. They are now connecting to the true being, the Eibishter himself. He concludes there in the Hemshech. The Hemshech took 3 years. So it's an Ayin Hey. It says as follows. And likewise, the final golos Akdoma the Gili Tami Torah she's Galalosid. It's Achonda to the Gili of the reasons of Torah, which will be revealed in the future. We have to note, we don't mean here reasons as in another explanation. As the Rebbe explains, Barichas and some landmark sichas and kontresim, that Losid Lovoi, what's the Torah Chadosha is not another reason. Not the Gilui Etzem, on the contrary. Then it'll be revealed how even the mitzvahs that have reason don't have reason, are rooted in a place that's higher than reason, and yet will also pervade reason. At any rate, it's a radical so as achana for that is the golos ha'acharin from me shall issue forth. The Hashem shebetur achana legilui the Matan Torah, just like it's a preparation for Matan Torah. It's a rechlis, Akdoma Sahel Navester, the Golos Mitzrayim. There had to be the concealment and the crushingness, as it were, of Golos Mitzrayim. That's the disappearance, literally, that precedes the emergence of a new and ultimate truth. So likewise, the Gilui of Mashiach's teachings, which is the Gilui of the inner essence of Torah. There is all of this disappearance, which is what the Golus induces, especially in the final Golus, because of the Mashiach. In the final, on the heels of Mashiach, it is the longest Golus of Golus, Amar, and the most bitter one. There cannot be a possible, a greater Golus than the one that we endured. The greatest head, the greatest concealment, the greatest lack, greatest depression, Therefore, through this golus we come to the true being. The true and final gula, which there's nothing higher. Gula, redemption, after which there cannot be, not that there won't be, but there cannot be any golus, because the Giluya Etzem is revealed and all of existence is transformed and expressive of that. There's no going back when this Etzem is touched and is revealed. Maybe Hashem's will that this be fulfilled very soon, but be as Mashiach Tzidkeinu. The coming of our righteous Mashiach, and they will lead us upright, proud to our land, with our youth and with our elders, with our sons, with our daughters, and very soon in our days, mamash. Okay? So Be'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow, the next Maimer, we'll decide which one. We want to keep current, so maybe skip a Maimer or two. But tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to learn on Zoom. I'll be in the car.